Jeff Rubin Show. I am Jeff Rubin, and today we are going to be talking about roller coasters because, god damn it, somebody has to. Joining us today is Jonathan Gordon from Gordon Rides. Jonathan, can you talk about what you do?
Sure. I'm a amusement ride designer. That's pretty much all there is to it. Come up with the concepts and develop the rides.
And kind of from the consumer side of things, we have Robb Alvey from Theme Park Review.
How's it going, guys?
Robb, can you talk about what Theme Park Review is?
Theme Park Review, we're just a website where we love to go around the world, ride roller coasters, and try not to puke.
You came to me because you went on my friend Scott's pizza tour.
Dude, that's right, yes.
You were on the pizza tour with, I guess, some other people from Theme Park Review, and you guys were on a cross-country amusement park trip. Is that correct?
That's pretty much right. We did all of the parks in sort of that upstate New York, New England area, and then we were in New York City. We went all the way from New York City and hit up all of the parks out to Sandusky, Ohio. So it was about 21 days on the road for that tour.
And how many people went on this trip?
Oh God, we had, I want to say, a total of about 150 people because we had about 90 on one trip and about 50 on another, so about 140-ish.
So I guess the first question that jumps to my mind when I hear that is, how did 140 people take 3 weeks off to go ride roller coasters?
I guess they bribed somebody a lot, but no, I mean, we get a lot of Europeans that come over, and they get a lot more vacation time than we do here in jolly good old USA. But we had a lot of people that came in from all over, and I think they work it out with whatever their job is, and that's why we split it up into two tours, because we had some people that did our shorter first leg of the tour, and then some people the second leg was a little bit longer. So people that are able to get off that much time, they did the whole thing, or they kind of split it up a little bit.
And 140 people is a ton to are you organize this?
Yes. We basically say, like, if you want to do a theme park review tour, all you have to do is you only have to be smart enough to book a flight and get to the meeting point, and then you leave your brain at the door, and we take care of everything else. We take care of the transportation, the park tickets, the hotels, feeding people. It's just a good time.
And how many theme parks did you guys hit in total?
I want to say it was, because we hit a couple smaller parks, I want to say over in the 21 days, it was probably somewhere between 18 to 22 different parks, if you count some the little places like Victoria Gardens in New York City and that kind of thing.
I can't believe you went to, Scott told me, you went to Beaucraft in New Jersey.
Dude, we totally did.
Beaucraft is right. Where are you from, John?
I'm from Stamford, Connecticut originally. I'm based out of White Plains, New York.
Beaucraft is just this really small park. It's right by where myself and my friend Scott grew up. And when I heard you guys went to Beaucraft, I was like, wow, they are thorough. These people are serious.
Well, okay, so let me at least explain the Beaucraft thing,
okay,
right?
Sure.
So at least it'll sort of make sense. It still doesn't make sense to me, but I'll try to figure this out. So, all right. You have to understand that, the roller coaster and theme park geeks, as we like to call ourselves, we're just really aficionados, and a lot of them they gotta ride every single roller coaster in the world. It's like Pokemon, gotta catch them all, right?
You're speaking my language, yeah, I'm with you.
Exactly. So whether it's a giant King Ka roller coaster, or some little crappy wacky worm in the middle of Australia or something, you gotta ride it, check it off the list, move on to the next one. So Beaucraft was what we called a credit horse stop, which it's a nice little family park and everything, and great for doing outings or whatever. But they have two roller coasters there. They're on the list. We got to hit them. So we drove into Beaucraft. 90 of us got out. We got our tickets for the rides. We went in, hit one coaster, did the second coaster, which, we got our credits, cha-ching, mark it off the list. We did a quick lap around the park, took some pictures, and we head out. And that's what we call a credit horse stop, when basically we're sort of there just to get the roller coaster credits in, mark them off the list, and head on to the next place.
Just to kind of pump your stats.
Exactly. No, that's exactly what it's like. There's people out there that, have to say, oh, I've been to every baseball stadium in the world, or, I've seen U2 at every concert venue. It's the same thing for roller coaster enthusiasts. They want to ride every single one. We don't care if it's really good or really crappy.
Obviously, you've been on a ton of roller coasters. What separates, because it's hard to, in my mind, and I love roller coasters, I mean, I'm doing this, But
Right.
it's hard to review a roller coaster because it goes by so quickly. What makes a great roller coaster?
All right, so let me ask you this, Jeff, because you're from the New York area, right?
Yeah.
So have you done a lot of roller coaster riding? Like, have you been to Great Adventure,
Oh
Coney
my
Island,
God,
and all those?
I love Great Adventure.
Okay,
have
so-
you been, John?
Yes, I've been. Done a few rides on Nitro myself, yep.
I love Nitro is probably my favorite at Great. Is Great Adventure? That's kind of like my home-based theme park. It's kind of where I'm from in New Jersey. So that's 90% of my roller coaster experience, and I go when I can elsewhere. But most of my roller coasters have been there, and I always thought that was a great roller coaster park. You have kind of more comparison, is it?
Honestly, it is one of the better ones in the country. Like, when we think about the great roller coaster parks of like America, what comes to mind is there's Cedar Point, there's Great Adventure, there's Magic Mountain. Those three are kind of in a lot of people's like the top three in the country, because they all three of them share like they're good amusement parks. They have a good like selection of rides, good variety, and they have a lot of them. So, and like you said, there's good ones and bad ones. So let me ask you this, Jeff. So you've
Sure.
been to Great Adventure.
Yeah,
So
many
what's your
times.
favorite ride there? You said Nitro, right?
I love Nitro, and going back to the classics, Batman the ride. Not the Batman and Robin ride that had the Chiller, which had the unfortunate circumstances of being released right after the Batman and Robin movie. So it's like
Right.
neon pink and hot blue. I'm talking the original Batman ride, which is kind of based on the Tim Burton Batman aesthetic.
Now, what is your favorite ride there? You said Nitro, right?
Sure, Nitro.
Now,
Let's say Nitro.
why do you like that ride?
Nitro's a smooth ride. It's really long. There's no loops, but it's got a lot of good up and downs. I mean,
Right.
this is a very technical term I'm using.
No, it totally is. I get it.
I can't quite. That's. I guess that's why I asked the question, because I can't quite articulate what I like about it.
Right. Okay. So let me ask you. You're pretty close, right? So what is your least favorite ride? Like, what ride just completely sucks for you? Like when you go to Great Adventure and someone's like, "Oh, I want to go on this ride," you're like, "Oh God, no, not that one."
I like it, but I've heard a lot of people complain about Scream Machine, the Great American Scream Machine, which I think, and I'm sure you two know better than I do, is important in roller coaster history. I think that was a big deal when it first came out, but it is a rough ride. It shakes you real hard.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
I hate
Not
to
very
break this to you, man. It's been torn down.
No. Is it because everyone got a headache by going on it?
See, okay,
But surely there's more to it than that, because I'm talking about like these really basic things like my head hurts when I get off the ride, so I don't like it.
This is exactly it. Like, you are not far off from like what roller coaster enthusiasts think. Like, you go to a park and you ride something like Scream Machine, and sure, there's some people out there who are like the diehards, like, oh, this was the first coaster of this type built, and it has historical presence, blah, blah, blah. But, like, the majority of the people that go on that ride, and they're like, Jesus Christ, like, my head feels like it's going to explode or something, because it's rough as hell. And all of a sudden, over the years, like, when it's brand new, everybody goes and rides it, and they're like, yeah, I conquered Scream Machine. But then over the years, it's like, okay, it's rough, and people just stop riding it. And that's exactly why they take out a ride like that. When you have a coaster like Scream Machine that's really rough, that gives people a headache, and after it's been around 15 years or so, you go there on like a packed day at Great Adventure, and there's no line for that roller coaster, kind of the writing's on the wall. Whereas you have something like Nitro, where that ride's been around, let's see, it opened in like 99. So yeah, it's been around like 12, almost 13 years. And that ride still gets hour-plus long lines, and people come off that ride loving it, really for the same reasons that you just said. It's smooth, it's long, it's fun. You sort of get that, like those up and downs that you were saying, like we call it airtime, and that's why people love it. And that's why that ride is still there today. And that's why Scream Machine, got the axe last year.
Jonathan, let me ask you, as someone who builds roller coasters, who designs them, in your mind, what are the elements of a great roller coaster ride?
Well, I mean, airtime is very important. That's really the holy grail of a coaster, a good ride, in particular when you're not dealing with inversions. It really depends on the ride. You got basically three categories of rides. You got wood coasters, which sit on their own. You have inverting steel coasters, loops, corkscrews, batwings, various other elements, and you also have the standard out and back type steel coaster, so non-inverting, non-looping. I would say wood coaster and non-inverting steel coasters. It's airtime. With a wood coaster, it's not necessarily smoothness, but it's unpredictability, and I think this plays into a lot of layout design. Certain coasters that do loops and corkscrews and all that, they have a general pattern. You sort of know what to expect. You watch it, you trace it. A lot of these other coasters, wood coasters in particular, you don't necessarily know what to expect when you go on it. So unpredictability really adds a lot. When you're designing a layout for a ride, often the best layouts are the ones that sort of throw you for a loop, no pun intended. But that's generally what it does. You don't really know what to expect, and that's usually what makes a good layout.
It's interesting you say the unpredictability, because I feel like when you go on the Cyclone at Coney Island, which is a century-old wooden roller coaster, half the fun is it feels like you might die.
Oh, it totally does. I mean, we just did the Cyclone on this last tour, and we had a lot of people that hadn't been on it before. And I told them, I said, okay, guys, if you want the true Cyclone experience, sit in the very, very back seat. And this is what I tell everybody, like anyone that's listening to the show, take that very back seat of the Cyclone. You know, I will tell you, there's a really, really good chance you're not going to die, but damn it, you come over that first drop, and it really does feel like there's a good chance that you will. It is one of the most intense, and it's very rough. Like, be prepared for it. You know, roller coaster experiences out there. So, you know, prepare yourself for that thing.
What are your all-time favorite roller coasters?
Well, you want steel or wood?
I'll take one of each.
One of each. Wood coaster... That's a close one. I'd probably say the Boulder Dash at Lake Compounce.
Where's
That's
that?
a good one.
Lake Compounce, Connecticut. I think it was Bristol, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
That is one amazing ride. And like I said, unpredictable and airtime galore. Couldn't ask much more with that. As far as steel goes, probably Nitro.
Wow, Nitro.
Yep. Yeah, that definitely gets a lot of props.
And what about you, Rob? Any favorites?
I mean, Boulder Dash is way up there for me, but I think I would, for the U.S., I would have to give my wood coaster to El Toro right there, A Great Adventure, especially after riding it a couple weeks ago. Just the insane amount of ejector airtime that you get on that thing. And then as far as steel coasters go, there's a ride kind of like Nitro, where it's non-looping but has tons of like up and downs in Germany called Expedition G-Force, and it just like it's fast, throws you out of the seat, not literally, but feels like it. And it's one of those like it has some OMFG moments in it, but it's kind of like hands up, have good time the whole way around.
To take this a step further, I'm wondering if either of you have any favorite roller coaster designers. Because when I go on it, I'm just having fun, but you guys have obviously taken it to the next level. Are there people whose work you follow?
Oh, man, you want us to geek out now, don't you?
I mean, kinda, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Jonathan, go for it, since you are technically a designer.
Is there someone whose work inspires you, Jonathan?
I'm not allowed to play favorites, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go historical.
I don't know anything about roller coaster designers, so anything you say right now, I'm going to be learning something.
So like I said, I respect the companies that are out there making coasters today. All do a fantastic job with various methods and ways and designs. And like I said, I'm going to go historical. Probably my favorite coaster designer historically would be Frederick Church. We're talking about the guy who invented what they call the Bobs, which is a roller coaster that did an amazing amount of twisting, a wood coaster that did an amazing amount of twisting before that was really available. You generally had just sort of a figure-8 design or an out-and-back design, but with Fred Church, he invented these trains with it was Frank Pryor, so it's Pryor and Church trains that are able to do articulated motion. They're able to handle these really steep embankments and sharp turns. And his design method was very high art on top of that. So you have a really good design aesthetic in addition to the thrill of the ride. So he really made some masterpieces in his time. And
what would be some examples of some of his works?
Well, there's not much left. I think there's the Dipper at Santa Cruz Boardwalk in California. It's one of the superlative designs that he did. He had one at Coney Island. I think it burned down in the 70s. That was the tornado. He did the Dragon Coaster at Playland Park in Rye, New York, which is my home park. And he had another one there called the Airplane. which is his real magnum opus. That was his top design. You can still see some pictures of it. They tore it down in '57. The ride was only about 30 years old at the time. It was an overzealous insurance company decided that it needed modifications. It didn't actually need the modifications, but when they were priced out, they decided to tear down the ride instead of do the modifications. And interestingly enough, it cost more to tear it down than it would have to modify it. So that's one of the great lost legends.
How do you even begin to research something like this? Because it's not like a book where the author's name is front and center.
Well, for me, I worked at Playland for a few summers in college. I had the privilege of seeing the airplane coaster blueprints firsthand. And I actually went into No Limits Coasters, the coaster simulation software, and I built the airplane coaster from the originals. So I have this design, and it was truly inspired the way he designed it with these almost like a tailspin sort of ride. It'd be these cyclonic towers. You'd drop off the edge, you hit the bottom of the drop, you go up the hill, and then all of a sudden you start banking to the right. It starts gradually, but you start spiraling down. As you spiral down, it feels like it gets tighter and tighter and tighter into that spiral. And you go around 360, you come around again, and then all of a sudden back up you go. Just a brilliant design. So I was very fortunate in having access to that.
Was that kind of what put you on this track of designing roller coasters? Pun not intended.
Interesting story there. But I've been drawing. Man, it used to be trains. It used to be steam locomotives when I was a little kid. That's what I loved. And then when I went to Disney World, I said, a steam locomotive does what? As I saw it on Thunder Mountain. And that's when I got introduced to the coaster. And from that point forward, I'd say probably second grade onward, I would draw mountains and draw track coming in and out of them. Later things got a little bit different. There was software out there. There was Rollercoaster Tycoon to play around with. A program in the 90s called Disney's Coaster, which is, I guess, a rudimentary simulator.
Is Rollercoaster Tycoon, because I've played Rollercoaster Tycoon, it's a great game, it's a really popular game. Is that actually an accurate simulation of trying to build a roller coaster?
No. Not really. It simplifies it quite a bit. Because the Rollercoaster Tycoon, I mean, let's say you have a drop, and let's say you're doing a wood coaster. You have straight, you have basically, 30 degrees, and then you have 60 degrees, and that's it. In reality, and also with the No Limits program, which is decently accurate, some of the simulation, some of the friction's a little bit off, but decently accurate program. You can do any angle you want, and you can customize it any way you want, and you can do certain track configurations that would never be possible in something like Rollercoaster Tycoon. You wouldn't be able to cross the track over another track in a certain way. There's just certain things that you can't do. So, it's a nice graphical representation. It's a whole lot of fun, but it's not particularly realistic.
Rob, have you played Rollercoaster Tycoon? You must have, right?
I was just going to say, because as somebody, like my while I've been doing roller coasters and theme parks, my day job has actually been in the video game business almost my entire life.
Whoa! What's your job in the video game business?
I've been producing video games since I was like 20 years old. And I actually at one point when the publisher I was working at the time, we were working with Chris Sawyer's agent on another title, and she came to me and said, "Hey, I know you're into roller coasters. I've got this developer I'm working with that's got this game, and I'd like you to take a look at it." And it was the early stages of Rollercoaster Tycoon, and I worked with Chris, for a little bit on that project. In fact, I think my name even appears in the credits on the first two Roller Coaster Tycoons, and my wife is actually cheat code in Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. But what I was going to say is, I totally agree with Jonathan. It's not like an accurate representation, but what that game actually did do well, it sort of opened up like the average Joe's person's eyes to a little bit more of an insight into the theme park world and into roller coasters, and not even just building roller coasters, but what it actually sort of takes to operate a theme park. And yeah, it really, really simplifies things a lot. But if you play that game, even just a little bit, all of a sudden you kind of start to get an understanding of how theme parks are sort of operated, between like having to have certain amount of maintenance on a roller coaster, having to have like certain areas where you're sort of entertaining. And the one thing it sort of teaches is spending at a park is so important. And I know people get so frustrated. It's like, oh, I got to pay $15 to park. Oh, I got to pay like $1 for this locker. Oh, I got to pay $4 for a soda. But you realize in that game, everything you do is so expensive, and the amount of money that a guest has to spend. It's called your per cap spending from the moment they walk into the gate, and you want that person to spend a little bit of money, like sort of like every 20 minutes or so, because it really takes that much to sort of make back what it takes to operate a park. So that part for me was always really fascinating. Is that like, yeah, it was really simplified in coaster design and operations, but it did actually open up your eyes just a little bit on what it takes to operate a park.
I like that you like theme parks so much that you are defending how much money they cost. You're like, no,
Dude,
it takes that much to run. I'm sure it does. Let me tell you what that game taught me. That game really taught me about theme park maintenance and management is garbage can placement. Is that if you don't put a garbage can at every intersection, every 20 feet, people are just going to start throwing garbage on the floor. And I see that everywhere. At concerts, just wherever you go. If you see garbage on the floor, look around. There's no garbage cans. People will only carry garbage so far. That's what I took from the game.
And the guys that run Cedar Fair, they're one of the big like amusement park chains, like another Six Flags. Everyone gives them crap for the amount of trash cans that are everywhere. Like we'll do funny things. We'll like be at Dorney Park, right? And we'll take a picture and we'll be like, okay, how many trash cans can you count in this picture? And we'll do like a little poll. And like sometimes I think the one we took at Dorney like a couple weeks ago, there was like 46 trash cans in this picture, but you don't actually see any trash on the floor. Now, granted, they do get a little bit of silly with the trash cans because it does get a little ridiculous, but I mean, they got a point. They must have played Roller Coaster Tycoon enough to learn exactly what you just learned, and so they literally built a trash can every 20 feet.
I want to get back on track here. Rob, do you have any favorite roller coaster designers?
I do, actually.
Name names. You don't have to play the politics. Give us the dirt.
The dirt is the guys at Intamin are gods. So I'm going to go a little bit more modern than Jonathan, but no, we're really big fans of a company called Intamin. They're based out of Switzerland, and they're responsible for almost every one of the top roller coasters that's currently ranked as like the top in the world. Like there's the guys that did El Toro at Great Adventure. They did King de Ka. They're the ones they did Expedition G-Force, Intimidator 305, Millennium Force, like a lot of the names that, when you see like a lot of these shows on Discovery Channel where they're always talking about like the top roller coasters in the world, a lot of them come from Intamin, and a lot of them come from a designer named Werner Stengel. And, Werner is... he's a German roller coaster guy, a German roller coaster designer, and he's getting up there in age. I think he was born in like the mid 30s or anything, and he's been doing roller coasters forever. I mean, he's the guy that sort of pioneered things like he built the world's largest portable roller coaster. If you ever have seen a ride that travels the German fairs called Olympia Looping, go to your computer right now and Google Olympia Looping. It's so impressive looking. It's one of those rides you think, this is really like a traveling ride. They like basically like after the fair is over, they dismantle it, put it on a truck, and move it someplace else. And I want to say I think it's even had like a perfect safety record. But the ride is so impressive. It has five vertical loops in it, tons of drops, helixes. So Intamin and Werner Stengel have worked together on a number of different rides, and together. If you look at like the top roller coaster polls, I mean, I want to say that if there's like a top 10 out there, you're going to see Intamin will sort of claim at least half of them, if not more.
Let me ask you about King de Ka. King de Ka is in Great Adventure in New Jersey, this theme park we keep talking about. It is, if it was, I believe it still is, the tallest, fastest roller coaster in the world.
It's not the fastest anymore.
Oh, okay, but it was.
But just up until recently, there was a park in United Arab Emirates that just built a faster roller coaster, also designed and built by Intamin. But yeah, no, King de Ka was.
It's pretty fucking fast.
It really is. Yeah.
So
sorry, I had to geek out one more time.
No. This is why I have you guys, because I know more about roller coasters than most people, but obviously not as much as you guys.
It's still the tallest, I think.
But it's not that fun, right? It's a very short ride. It's about 30 seconds, if that. Do you enjoy that roller coaster?
Here's the thing.
Let me describe it real quick.
Okay.
It's one of those rides where you get there's no uphill. You go 100 miles an hour out of the gate. I'm sure you guys know what the actual number is. What's the actual number?
It's like 126 or something like that.
And you're doing that almost immediately. There's none of that going up the hill part. I don't know how they do it, but it just propels you out of the gate, and then you go up this really tall thing. It's the tallest roller coaster in the world. I think it's something like 425 feet, and then you come back down. What was it?
456.
And then you come back down, and that's it. That's the whole ride, and it's the longest line in the park. And I don't think it's that fun. Of course, I rode it. It's the tallest, fastest roller coaster in the world, or at least the time I rode it was. Do you enjoy King Ka?
Here's the thing. They went for the tallest, fastest coaster in the world. The launch is unbelievable. Like, the fact that you go like 0 to like insane in that short a time, it's unbelievable. But yeah, it's over really quick. For me, I'm an El Toro fan. If it comes between riding, let's say, Nitro, King Ka, El Toro, I'll be over at Nitro and King Ka or Nitro and El Toro pretty much the rest of the day. I'll do my ride on King Ka because it's cool and impressive, the type of ride that it is, the fact that they actually were able to build that. But it's not my favorite in the park, no.
I will say this about King Ka. There's a warning before you get on, and it says the ride launches, then you go uphill. If you come back downhill, back to where you start, don't panic. And dude, I've never been more afraid to step on a roller coaster. I said to my friends I was with, if that happens, like I plan on starting to panic if the ride just doesn't go where it's supposed to.
That is what's called a rollback. And I'll tell you, a rollback on a ride like King Ka or Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point, that is what every enthusiast wants. They want to get launched up, just barely not make it over the top, and then come all the way back down.
Have you ever had a rollback?
I have not had a rollback on any of those two.
It seems like if you're a baseball fan trying to go and see a perfect game.
Exactly. No, that's exactly what it is. I had one rollback on one of those launch coasters in where the hell was I? In Sweden. And it was definitely cool because, again, it's that unexpected part. It's like, well, I know I'm supposed to launch, go over this hill, and come down, but when all of a sudden you do something that's like, wait a second, what the hell is going on here? That's when it actually starts to get a little bit thrilling. And people do freak out at that. Like, I've seen it happen at Cedar Point, and people on the train were seriously freaking out. Yeah. And I'm like, don't freak out. We want to be you. Like, damn it, this sucks. Like, I wanted to be you on the train. And no, like, they were freaking out and scared.
I don't understand how you start putting together a roller coaster. So I want to ask you, Jonathan, you got a blank page. Where do you start? Do you figure out what the track's going to look like? Do you figure out how it's going to be held up? Is it a matter of how much money you have? You got a blank page. What happens?
Blank page. It really depends. If the customer comes to you and says, I want a coaster that does this, that, and that, you basically design to those parameters.
What would be like something someone requests? They're saying, oh, I want 2 corkscrews and a loop.
It could be 2 corkscrews and a loop. They could say we need it 120 feet tall with it needs to fit into this particular space within the park. We want to go over this ride, but we don't want to get anywhere near this other ride. A lot of the land constraints, it's always going to be space and money and, I guess, like a DJ requests. So it's sort of, you just sort of marry it all together. Now, if you're going with a blank page, the sky's the limit, so you sort of design your own little space. You figure out the parameters you want to give yourself. You might say, all right, 150 feet, 7 loops, that sort of thing. And then you just play with it. You figure out where you want to go with it. You figure, all right, if I string this element, this curve next to this drop, will this be more unexpected than doing something like that? And then you have to watch the forces, make sure you're not going to smush anybody. But overall, it's generally guided unless you're given that blank sheet and told to go haywire with it.
I'm hoping the I'm not going to smush anybody is pretty high on that priority list.
That's right.
Now, Rob, you are not a professional roller coaster designer, but in all your travels through theme parks, have you ever said, you know what would be a great idea for a roller coaster?
Oh man, dude, this is what's great about being an enthusiast. That's what we're sort of required to do. Like we're the group that goes to parks and that probably annoys the crap out of the parks because we're like, hey, it'd be really cool if you had this kind of ride over here. It'd be really cool if we had that kind of ride over here. But at the end of the day, it's like the parks sort of get why we're there, and they appreciate that we have crazy ideas. But a lot of these crazy ideas that sometimes we'll have, they do end up like taking some of these and funneling into something that the park ends up building like later on down the road.
Give me an example of a crazy idea you've had. Rob, go.
Oh my God! My crazy ideas. Well, okay. For example, for years there's this ride called Superman out at Six Flags Magic Mountain.
They have one in Great Adventure now too. Are they different?
Yeah, it's totally different. So
Okay.
the one at Magic Mountain is more like King Ka, where it launches you straight up and you go up this giant hill. But you actually do like a rollback on that when you roll back into the station. And for years, everyone kept saying like, and it's a huge fucking like hill. It's 415 feet, right? This giant thing. It's like, and everyone's like, it'd be really cool. Like, what if they built a drop tower off the side of that like huge ass tower? And everyone's like, no, they could never do that. And like for years, this has been like a rumor and stuff that people have been talking about. And literally like 2 weeks ago, Magic Mountain just announced they're going to build a 415 drop tower off the side of this frickin' tower that Superman sits on. And of course, we're like, all right, we've seen it done before at another park, but we're like, just the idea that like a lot of the enthusiasts have been talking about this for years. You want to actually believe, and this is probably not true, but we at least want to believe that the park has probably been like hearing us saying it over and over and over. That maybe they did say like, hey, these guys travel the world for theme parks and roller coasters. Maybe this wouldn't be such a bad idea. Maybe we should look into this and see if it happens. And it happened, and now they're building the world's tallest frickin' drop tower next year.
Jonathan, let's say I have an idea. I'm Rob. I've got an idea about a drop tower. I'm really good at Roller Coaster Tycoon, and I just have designs. I want to break into the business. What do I do? What did you go to college for?
You see, that's the toughest question of all. I went to college for engineering. So I got my engineering degree, and what I found is that the amusement industry is very, very small.
How many new roller coasters are built a year?
Quite a few, actually. Well, I'd have to check the statistics on that. There's actually a good website for that. It's a roller coaster database.
I imagine it's difficult to break into, though. It's almost like, if you're, to keep using baseball, if you're a minor league player and you're trying to make it up to the big leagues, I assume very few people are actively designing roller coasters.
There are very few people actively designing roller coasters, that's true. The way that I got in was I had some good ideas, and from that point forward just kept developing. The one that I'm doing now is not a coaster at all. It's called Mega Whip, and Mega Whirl. We're busy developing these rides right now. You have to get an investment. You have to, and granted, Gordon Rides is a startup company. We're only about 3 years old. Most companies fail within 5 years, but looks like we're on the road to success at this point. We'll just have to see what happens in the next few months. But that's sort of the path that I took. I sort of came at it from the side. Rather than relocating to certain areas where it would be more likely to get a job in the amusement industry, you might want to move to where the manufacturers are. I sort of did it around the back.
I hate to be blunt about this, but let's say I'm an aspiring roller coaster designer. Is this a high-paying field to enter? Am I paid per scream? How does it work?
It's generally not particularly high-paying. In the amusement industry, the people who make the money are generally the parks.
The parks and the guy running the water gun game where you have to fill up the balloon.
Right. The concessions and the food make a lot of money for the parks. So it's all funneled through that sort of mentality. You assume that the rides are there for the entertainment, and the money is made with the food and the concessions.
Now, on your website, which is GordonRides.com, you have a few concept designs that you're trying to sell. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. The concept designs, granted, if somebody wants one, we're all ears, and we're certainly willing to sit down and talk about it. But, they're out there. These have been patented, the designs that you see up there, and a few of them are getting a little bit of publicity. But, eventually, if the environment's right, if the timing's right, and if the the will is there to do it, we can bring some of those forward as products.
Can you talk us through some of these concepts that you have, some of these rides you'd love to put together?
Oh, boy. Well, let's see. I'm going to open up the site and see what I actually have on there for a second.
I'm already there. Let me tell you
Concepts.
the first thing you've got under showcase. Inverted wood coaster.
I figured if you take a wood coaster and you hang the carriage from the inside of the track, like the Batman ride at Six Flags with your feet dangling. Not to say you do any loops or corkscrews or anything like that, but just on the inside of the structure. That would make it for a neat ride. So I got the patent. And then in college, I developed the idea, did a senior thesis on it. I'd love to take that one out, but, the investment to make that sort of thing a reality is definitely has 6 zeros attached to it.
Inverted roller coaster doesn't mean that there's loops. It means that your feet are dangling. Kind of, instead of the track being below you, it's on top.
That's the interesting thing. If a roller coaster has inversions, that means that it's going upside down. But if a roller coaster is an inverted coaster, like an inverted steel, your feet are dangling like on a ski lift.
So this is a wooden coaster where your feet would dangle like it's a ski lift.
That's right.
That's crazy. Is that going to work?
That could work. It depends on a couple of things. There's some good track technologies out there that can be very nicely integrated into the system.
So it's a wooden Batman the ride, sort of, but without loops.
Without loops, without any inversions. The whole goal with the inverted wood is that you're going to sort of marry two ideas. You have the inverted coaster where your feet are dangling, and then you have a wood coaster, which is known to be rough and rickety and full of airtime. So if you ride an inverted coaster, airtime is usually not something you get. And just to define the airtime is the sensation that you're either floating, which is standard air or floater air, which happens at the top of a hill as you're cresting or going down a steep drop. And then you have ejector air, which is when you're being pushed literally out of your seat, which is more forceful negative Gs. So, you don't find that on inverted coasters. You find loops, you find inline twists, other things like that, but you don't find ejector air. So the idea is you sort of combine the two of those, and you end up with a really unique experience, and not to mention you're tunneling inside all this wood structure.
Because it couldn't be built above you. You'd kind of be riding through it.
You'd be riding through it. It would be like going through a small forest, I guess, at breakneck speed. It'd be full of what are called foot choppers, where you think you're going to knock your leg off, but you're not.
Rob, as a theme park enthusiast, what do you think of this idea?
Well, okay, so we always joke about stuff when a park's going to announce something, and I'll be honest, and like don't take offense to this, Jonathan, or anything. We always joke about Great Adventure, they're going to announce a 500-foot inverted Woody or something, and we laugh about it, right? Because like in our minds, that just is it's impossible. It doesn't seem like a ride that would make sense. But if somebody out there, again, it's like the guy that designed the screwed up like 4D ride where the seats turn as that goes down of a drop. We would say, wow, that just sounds so insane that I can't even imagine that being built. So you joke about it, and then someone completely insane like Jonathan comes along and actually designs this shit, and we're like, oh my god, this thing that we joked about for years could actually be a reality. And of course, then the jury's still out whether or not it would be fun. But I'll tell you, if the inverted wooden roller coaster ever gets built, I'm first in line, because I can't believe that would actually get done. And when it can get done, I have to ride the damn thing.
Let me talk about one of your other designs, Jonathan, the Warring Coaster. Can you tell me about that one?
The Warring Coaster has received a good amount of attention recently. One of the embodiments of that particular design is Star Wars.
Sold! Don't tell me any more. I'm in.
Well, when Disney announced that they're redoing Star Tours, which is their motion simulator ride based
Which
on
is
Star Wars.
unfortunate. I hate to interrupt you. It's unfortunate that they're redoing that, because I actually was just at Disney World, and I went on Star Tours, and the best part about that ride is it is totally free of the taint of the prequels, because they built it pre-2000 before Episode 1 came out.
That's right.
So it's all it's all about Hoth, and it doesn't have any Naboo or nothing from the prequels in it. It's all about the original trilogy. And you go back and you're like, oh yeah, Star Wars used to be kind of cool. and now they're redoing it, and I'm assuming,
Jar Jar Binks is in it, dude. I'll just put it out there.
Even putting aside Jar Jar Binks, they'll ruin it somehow. So you were saying they're redoing Star Wars.
They redid it, and the forums suddenly started lighting up as they saw my concept. And what my concept does is you take, I don't know, for example, 6 coaster tracks, each one of them launched. You have an arena that's built at least 100 feet tall, maybe taller, size of 1 or 2 football fields, maybe a bit bigger. So huge facility. And you have 6 tracks. And I don't know if you're familiar with dueling coasters or racing coasters.
I've been at Islands of Adventure in Orlando. There is something dragons. It's
Dueling
dragon
Dragons.
themed. What is it?
Dueling Dragons.
Dueling Dragons, yeah.
So a ride's sort of like that. But
Or the Batman and Robin one I mentioned before. That had 2 tracks, too.
Batman and Robin was sort of a dueler. Not quite, but sort of like that. A lot of the dueling things means that they head towards each other. A racing coaster, they head next to each other. So if you're doing a racing, they're sort of side by side for a while, and then they come around. But if they start heading towards each other and go past each other, that's dueling. So in this case, you have 6 tracks. 3 of them are going to have carriages shaped like a TIE fighter. 3 of them are going to have carriages shaped like an X-Wing. You load them up, you launch them into this arena, which has the entire Death Star scape built into it. Special effects, interactive queue line where the guests waiting in line can actually shoot at the in-motion carriages. And what you do is you sort of race alongside your counterparts. So if you're on the Rebel Alliance side, you're in your X-Wing, and then your other groups are in their X-Wings, and then they sort of break off. And next thing you know, you're dueling with TIE fighters, and it integrates a laser tag component to it. Heads-up display so you can see what you're shooting at.
Wait, you're playing laser tag, you're shooting at the other people on the other coasters?
You're basically living the battle of the Death Star on a roller coaster.
I remember one roller coaster I went on, I think it was at Hershey Park. They have a H2O-ster, I think is what they called it.
Yeah, that was a neat one.
And it's not a great roller coaster in and of itself, but the people in line are shooting water guns at the people on the coaster.
Oh, yeah.
And the people on the coaster, when you start, you kind of fill up a bucket of water, and then you go over the line, you can drop the bucket of water on the people. And I always thought that was a great idea.
Right.
And if you time it just right, you could get sort of like the maximum damage done with the people on the ground.
And it's fun that way. It's fun when you're waiting online and when you're actually on the roller coaster itself.
That's right.
So, Rob, what do you think of this idea?
The Star Wars idea?
I mean, how do you feel about themed roller coasters, like something like Batman or Top Gun, or Top Gun is the example I use. I did go on a Top Gun roller coaster once. I think in Toronto there's a Top Gun roller. But anyway, how do you feel about themed roller coasters like Star Wars or Harry Potter versus something that's just Medusa or El Toro?
Here's the thing. If you're at a theme park and you're expecting themed attractions like Rock and Roller Coaster down at Disney or Tower of Terror, like those themes have to be done really, really well to sort of sell what the ride is. Otherwise, come on, you're just a roller coaster, and if your roller coaster doesn't if the roller coaster doesn't kick ass and the theming on the ride isn't very good, why'd you bother in the first place, right? So it's like if you're going to build a themed ride like Batman. And so Batman's a good example because the ride itself isn't really themed once you get out of the station. But it's got you get in the station, you got the Batman theme going, you've got the video screens going, and the queue line has all the kind of dilapidated look. And I'd say that one is okay. I mean, it's not no Disney or anything, but if you're really going to do a themed attraction, don't just kind of slap up some cardboard cutouts or whatever. Sort of like what they did. Have you been back since they rethemed Medusa to Bizarro?
I have not. Medusa, which is a pretty good ride, is now Bizarro Superman, which, by the way, I love the idea of theming a roller coaster specifically after Bizarro Superman.
But see, what you just said makes sense. Medusa was already a good ride. It was one of the best in the park, and all they did is they slapped up a bunch of Superman stuff everywhere, and they're like, "Hey, we're Bizarro. Look, there's new audio on the ride, and there's fire." And honestly, it's fine and all, but they didn't need to do that. They rethemed a ride to like a movie tie-in, or comic book tie-in that actually didn't need it. Where it's like, if you're gonna theme a ride to something, at least like build something from scratch, make it really good, and the theming make a lot of sense. So, I mean, if you're going to theme a ride, just make it kick ass.
What's a good example to you of a ride that used the theme really well?
I mean, honestly, like I said, like Disney does a really good job. Universal does a really good job. I mean, things like Tower of Terror, like you get on Tower of Terror and like you feel like you're really immersed in that. I mean, I went on Tower of Terror just like 4 days ago, and like I hadn't been on the one down in Florida in probably like a year, and you forget like wow. I mean, like you step into the library room, and then you step into the boiler room. Like even the employees that work there, they're like in the character. Like everyone step into the dead center. I mean, like they don't break their character. Like everything about that ride just seems so well themed from the minute you walk into the building to the minute like even like the area where you buy your like $18 photo at the end is beautifully themed up like with the hotel. So that one always comes to mind as probably one of the best themed rides out there.
I went to Disney World fairly recently, probably more recently than say most adults that don't have children, and
right.
And I was pretty impressed with the show they put on there. It's kind of expensive to get in, but once you're in, they don't nickel dime you. Like if you go to Universal, every ride you're on, they're trying to sell you the fast pass. They're trying to upgrade your experience. Once you get into Disney World, you're pretty much set. And I saw this thing at Disney World that really defined Disney World for me. When I was there, I was just waiting for a ride. I saw this guy walking around cleaning, and it was this elderly man. He must have been 70. And he just saw a piece of gum on the floor, on the ground, in between two bricks, and he leaned over and, really got a scraper out, and he really worked it up. And I thought that nowhere else in the world would you see someone working this hard to get one piece of gum off the floor.
No, they take an insane amount of pride down there. I mean, and good for them.
What are your thoughts on Disney World? How's Disney World rank?
Me?
Anyone. Let's just talk about Disney World.
To me, Disney World, it is like the end-all, be-all of actual like theme park resorts. I mean, like you said, you were just down there. If you go and you book a Disney World vacation, you stay on property. And I'm not like trying to sell the place or anything because it's not my favorite of all the Disney parks in the world. But I mean, it really is the end-all, be-all. Like I just spent like a day at Epcot, and I mean, like where else in the world can you go and be like, okay, fine. Like in the morning, I'm going to go and do like Test Track and some other cool rides, and then all of a sudden I'm going to get a beer in Germany, have like a really kick-ass pizza in Italy, and then just
whoa! They have kick-ass pizza at the Epcot in Italy?
They do actually.
I'm sorry. They have kick-ass pizza at the Italy station in Epcot. Have you run this by Scott yet?
Dude, I totally have. In fact, when we were down there, I tweeted Scott and I said, dude, you have to get down here. This is no bullshit. The pizza at the Epcot Pavilion, because it's a restaurant done by I think it's one of the famous like Italian places. And they have a restaurant down there called Via Napoli, and it's fairly new within the last couple of years. It's really kick-ass margarita pizza. I even sent Scott pictures of it. I'm like, dude, you have to check this out. And last time I saw him, he told me that was one of the places that's on his list. When he goes down to Orlando, he wants to check it out. So I think it's actually legit. So I mean, I'll wait for his review on it, but I think it's actually a real place.
Let's say I'm Richie Rich. How much does a roller coaster cost to build?
How big do you want it?
Huge. I want to take all my friends on it in a hilarious montage.
Well, let's see.
Let's say I wanted to build Nitro, this roller coaster we all keep talking about it. That's a great adventure. How much does Nitro cost to build?
Well,
soup to nuts, Robb.
A lot of them don't reveal the numbers, but it could be pretty safe to say tens of millions.
Wow, really?
Probably 15, 16 million, all the way up to 20 mil. Trying to think which park just announced, either it was today or yesterday, they're doing a $20 million coaster.
Well, Canada's Wonderland just announced their Leviathan coaster, and that's going to be a 300-foot one, and they said was it $28 million they're spending on that one?
Canada's Wonderland, I think, is where I went on the Top Gun ride. Is that possible?
It was, yeah.
Yeah,
it's very possible. I mean, wood coasters are usually cheaper, relative size. Granted, they need more maintenance over their lives, that sort of thing. generally can spend for a permanent fixed coaster anywhere between $3 million and $6-7 million for a wood coaster, and then all the way up in the 20s, 30s, and even probably as far as 40s for the biggest and baddest of the steel coasters. Then you have the portable models, which are quite a bit less, but it depends what you're getting.
It just sort of comes down like, do you want a Rolling Thunder or do you want an El Toro? And that's what you always have to keep in mind. Like something like El Toro, which is like the latest and greatest of wood coaster technology. I want to say that when they announced El Toro, it was like $10 to $15 million, but some of the parks are still building more what we would call like a traditional wooden sort of medium-sized coaster. And those woodies usually range, I want to say like some of the latest GCI or Gravity Group coasters out there, they said that they were putting up for between like $6 and $8 million. Does that sound about right, Jonathan?
I think that might be a little bit on the steeper side. If you look at what was the latest Gravity Group one, Wooden Warrior, Quasi Park. I don't think it was nearly that amount. But so something like the Voyage would probably fit right into that category.
Where is the Voyage?
Voyage is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana?
That's correct.
That's
right.
correct.
Santa Claus.
You guys have both obviously been to a lot of theme parks. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on lines.
Oh, we don't wait in lines. We're too good for that.
Theme park review, when you're on your big tour, do you not wait on lines?
No, most of the times when we do our tours, right? I mean, like, okay, so we'll have to wait in a line here or there. But we sort of balance that out. When we do our tours, we work really closely with the parks. And we do what's called exclusive ride time, or ERT, where essentially we rent
I love that you have an acronym for exclusive ride time.
I know, isn't it great? So,
it comes up so often, we can't be bothered to keep saying exclusive ride time, exclusive ride time. We just call it ERT.
Exactly. But we basically rent out the coasters in the morning or night, like the major ones, like using Great Adventure, for example. So when we did our visit to Great Adventure, we had 100 people, and in the morning we went in and we rode Nitro and Dark Knight with the lights on for an hour. Then we went over and did the new Green Lantern. They put us first on King Ka for the day. So there's like 4 other major roller coasters we didn't have to wait in any lines on at all. And then at night, they opened up El Toro for us for a full hour after the park closed, just our group. So if you think about like how many seats are on the train, and there's like 100 of us, you're not waiting in any lines at all. Like it's basically like train pulls in the station, you get off, you hop right back on the next one, and there you go. And then when we were at the park the whole day, they have like their Flash Pass system. So we worked with the park. We got those little Flash Pass Q-bots, and we basically waited in no lines the entire day.
How do you feel about Flash Pass philosophically, though? This gets back to what I was saying about Disney World versus Universal. So when you go to Universal, after every ride, before every ride, they're like, spend this more money, get the Flash Pass, don't wait on lines. But when you go to Disney World, they use a system where with your ticket, you can scan it, and this doesn't cost any extra money, and you can kind of queue up your rides. You can get a time to come back later and skip the line, and they use that to kind of, as I understand it, to help balance the load in the park and help everyone's experience. But when you go to something like Universal or Six Flags, when I went to Six Flags, I went with some friends, and we got there, and it was very clear, very immediately, that if we didn't spend any extra money, we were going to do 2 or 3 rides the whole day. And it was a concerted effort to get down there just in the first place. But if we spent an extra $50 a person, we could basically do as many roller coasters as we wanted. Yeah, and that was for the Gold Pass. Since then, they have added the Platinum Pass, where you can just stay on the ride and re-ride it. Just like when you pull into the station, kind of give the middle finger to the next person waiting.
That's
and
exactly
just say,
it.
I'm going again.
The Platinum's kind of silly, but going back to the whole philosophical thing, there's like 2 sides of the argument, right? So, okay, the thing about Disney World, you have to remember, so the way Disney World does it, they have their Fast Pass system set up, and it's a limited amount of people that can get it. So you pull the Fast Pass, and like, let's say we were down at Disney Hollywood Studios and we wanted to ride Toy Story Mania. Well, we got there a little bit late.
Toy Story Mania so badly.
Oh, it's so great.
Yeah.
So we go down there and we were a little bit late. All the Fast Passes were sold out. So, but that's the thing. It's like, and we weren't even there that late. It was like maybe 11 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, screw you guys. Fast Passes are sold out. Now you got to wait in line. But here's the thing about like the Universal and the Magic or the Six Flags system. It's basically, yeah, you know what, you're going to pay the extra money, but you know what? Here's the reality of it. You can go and ride whatever the hell you want to, pretty much as many times as you want, whenever you want, without some like system telling you what time really you have to come back. I mean, when the way it works at Six Flags, they give you this kind of like Tamagotchi looking thing, right? Like little like page or whatever. And yeah, you tell it like, okay, I want to queue up like El Toro, and it tells you like, okay, come back in 20 minutes. But you can do that over and over and over and over and over again. If you want to queue up El Toro like 20 times that day, there's nothing stopping you. Like El Toro doesn't run out of tickets or whatever. And that's the thing. It's like, yeah, it's expensive to do it. But I always look at this. It's like, think about how long you spend in lines. Even if the line's only 20 minutes, right? Those pockets of 20 minutes, if you're going on, let's say, 15 rides a day, that like adds up to a lot. And you just have to decide, is it worth the extra money to like be able to have a little bit more freedom and flexibility? Or do you not mind waiting, anywhere between 20 minutes to 2 hours for a ride?
I mean, the real problem is that some of the rides, the newer rides, they have this Fast Pass system built in, where Fast Pass has its own entrance.
Exactly.
But the older rides, you gotta like walk by everyone that's actually waiting in line, and it's the worst feeling.
No, it's a pain in the ass. It really is. It's like when they retrofit a ride, and honestly, they've gotten a little bit better over the years. When they first started doing it, dude, people would get pissed. I mean, I remember we were down at Six Flags America in Washington, D.C., and this is a pretty rough neighborhood to, first of all, right? And we all got their Flash Pass system, and I remember like it just happened to be like 20 of us like all got over to Superman, and they broke it up. They're like, okay, 5 of you guys ride, and like somebody else come in, but we had these systems. And like people were like, like I want to go next. I'm going to kick your guys' ass. And like, it's one of those things like we weren't really doing anything wrong. But I think over the years, people are now a little bit more accustomed that the parks have these systems. But yeah, it really still does suck when a park retrofits it and you got to walk past everyone and they're getting all pissed off at you. And you're like, look, dude, I just bought the system. Like, don't get pissed at me,
Jonathan is someone that appreciates kind of this classical era of parks and just the history of roller coaster design. Does it bother you at all that those who spend more can skip the line?
Philosophically, sure. Because I'm not always willing to spend it all. But, at the same point, if you want to get the maximum enjoyment out of the park, that's what it costs these days. You just sort of got to be prepared for that. Everything goes up in price. If you want to get a full day of coasters in a big park, you should be prepared to buy the pass.
What I always say to my friends when we're planning a trip to Six Flags and we're just trying to figure out how to do it, I always say, you don't go to Six Flags to save money.
No.
That's right.
The other thing, like kind of going back to like theme park tips, which is a lot of things that we give people is, when you are, because you're local to Six Flags Great Adventure, we always tell people like, look, like think about when you're going to go and be smart when you plan your visit. Don't go on like a busy Saturday, like, get there. We always tell this to people. This is the most important tip I can give someone about theme parks. Literally get there so early in the morning. I know it sucks to get out of bed early and like run down to the theme park, but sometimes if you can be there even a half an hour before the park opens, like almost like very Clark Griswold style, and like get up there right to the front and literally like start getting in some of those attractions that you want, and then you hit early, you really can get in 3 or 4 major rides before the crowd hits them. The crowd is all behind you, and they're doing the same thing. Just try to stay one step ahead of the crowd, and then all of a sudden, like your need for having to have a flash pass starts to diminish. And you'll have a better time because you hit the King de Cause, the El Toros, the Nitros, early on in the day.
When we went to Disney World, the people I went with, God, I put them through the worst experience. I sleep in so much. I do not like to get up in the morning. But for Disney World, we were eating breakfast at like 6. I was really running it on a schedule. I want this like 800-page tome about what order to do the rides in.
You have to, though. I mean, because the thing is, nobody wants to wait in lines, right? Like, you ask anybody, it's like, hey, you want to wait in line? They're going to say, like, hell no, and of course not. And it's like you said, like, I hate getting up early, too. I mean, like, when my day-to-day, I'm never up before 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. You kidding me? But when we do our TPR tours, like, I know, and I tell everyone, it's like, look, if you really want to have a kick-ass day in the park, we have to get there early. We'll get in a shit ton of riding if we get there early. And everyone is like, they agree. They're like, wow, we like really knocked out this park in like a quarter of the time that we would have if we just showed up at like 11, 12 o'clock. I mean, like I said, when we went down to Disney World, we got screwed out of fast passes because we didn't get there till 11. If we had got there when the park opens, we would have had a fast pass for, Toy Story Mania, Rock and Roller Coaster, Tower, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I don't doubt the people that are going on the 3-week roller coaster vacation have no trouble getting up early.
Oh, they do when they drink late at night, but that's another story.
Let me leave you with one more philosophical question. I work in comedy, and I often find that when I'm watching a comedy or I'm watching stand-up, instead of laughing, I'll just say, yeah, that's funny. I just think about it. I'm wondering, do you guys scream on roller coasters, or is it more of just sitting there and appreciating it?
A little both. It depends on the ride. I'd say when I got on El Toro, you got a little bit of the yelp out of me a couple times. I think Boulder Dash does it just about every time, but something like Nitro, I guess, is a little bit more expected, so I'm not really going to be shouting too much, just enjoying every moment of it.
Rob?
A little, he's right. A little bit of both. It depends a lot on the group that you're with, and it depends on the ride that you're on. I'm sure, like if you go with a bunch of friends and you're all having a good time, you're screaming and yelling, arms in the air. If you're going like, let's say maybe like with yourself and like one other person, or like a chick you're trying to impress or something, maybe you're a little bit more reserved. But it depends on the ride. Like honestly, like when King Ka launches, you were like hands in the air, like OMFG, like crazy. Same thing with El Toro. You get on Nitro, and Nitro is just a ride. You can just go and have fun. Maybe you throw your hands up in the air, maybe you don't, and you just sort of enjoy the experience.
I remember when I went on King Ka, when it had that insane launch, just laughing. I remember laughing at just the ridiculousness of the feeling and just at how silly what we were doing is, and how all our technological, all our engineering achievements mankind had worked for so long to enable me to do this.
Yes.
Do you think there's still room? Roller coasters have been around for over a century now. Are they still improving?
Sure. There's new things coming out all the time. I guess the question is whether or not they're going to reach a wall, at which point there's not going to be any more innovation. I would say it's just going to keep going.
I definitely think that there will always be something that seems a little bit more screwed up than the last thing we went on. I mean, like I said, this 415-foot drop tower, that's screwed up to me. The fact that they've built now, 2 of these roller coasters where as you're coming down the drop, the seats flip around, that's totally screwed up. I mean, Jeff, like Google X2 at Magic Mountain, and you'll see what I mean. It's a completely like screwed up ride. The thing I'm waiting for a ride to go over 500 feet. Yeah, you know what? And that's the thing. I want the 500-foot inverted wooden coaster with seats that flip. When you design me that, maybe I'll say we'll hit the wall. But until we get there, dude, I honestly think that like every few years you're going to see something that's going to be slightly screwed up than the thing that we saw before.
God, I hope so, because I want to have this conversation with you guys every few years. Thank you so much for joining me. ThemeParkReview.com, GordonRides.com. Check them both out. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Rob.
Hey, no problem, man. Thank you.
My pleasure. Take care.
Wait. Don't stop listening. I know this is the part of the show where I would usually say that's our show, and I'd start doing all these plugs. But starting this week, we're going to try to do this new feature where we have follow-up interviews with people who have previously been on the Jeff Rubin Show. And we're not going to do it every week. It might not last. But we're going to do one today, and I've got a few more planned beyond that. Today, our first follow-up interview is going to be with Scott Weiner of Scott's Pizza Tours. You may remember him from episode 3. He came up a lot today, so I did want to follow up with him and hear about pizza at Epcot. And this isn't a long interview. This is just going to be a few minutes. You can kind of think of it as a dessert. The main course was the roller coaster interview, and now we're going to be talking to Scott for some pizza dessert. And here's that. First of all, thank you so much for setting us up with my guest this week. I mentioned on the show how I got into touch with Robb because him and his theme park review crew managed to take a day off of roller coasters and go on a pizza tour. But also, Jonathan, the roller coaster designer, I got in touch with via your brother Dan.
Yeah, it's a whole Weiner family thing going on.
But I wanted to follow up with you because briefly while we were talking, the idea of eating pizza in Epcot at Disney World came up. Their Italian villa, there's different sections for all the different, there's different sections for all the different countries of the world in Epcot. The only good one's Norway because it has that awesome ride where you go backwards really quick for a second with like the trolls and stuff. But Robb had mentioned the Italian one has good pizza, and I said, have you checked with Scott on that? And he said he had.
Yes, they texted me photos as they were eating, so every step along the way, I was right there with them at the table.
You have not been to Epcot and eaten pizza there, so you can't comment on the quality of it, but is it possibly good? It seems like just theme park food in general seems like it's going to be terrible.
Right, okay, but, well, first of all, I mean, I don't think this place even counts as normal theme park food. We're talking about Epcot, where they really kind of strive for something bigger. Of course, theme parks don't have to make very good food because the kids are kind of a captive audience, and you got chicken fingers on the menu, and you're going to score. So really, as far as these places are concerned, this is a pizzeria that really strives at being a real deal, a Neapolitan pizzeria, which, right off the bat, being a Neapolitan pizzeria means that they might not be something that kids are into. So it's really ballsy for them to do it. And, I mean, from what I know about the place, and as you said, I have not been there, but from what I know about the place, it's definitely a real deal spot.
We're talking about legit Neapolitan pizza here.
Yeah, we're talking about, I believe they are VPN certified, Vera Pizza Napolitana, which means that they're using the proper oven, they're using proper flour, proper tomatoes, and when I say proper, I mean that they're proper as certified by an organization called the Associazione Veraci Pizza Napolitana, this private group from Naples that certifies pizzerias that make pizza within the style that was popular in the early 19th century.
I'll say this about Disney World. I was there, and I mentioned this in the episode that I was there a few years ago. But they have, most theme parks you go and you expect to just be eating French fries and churros. At Disney World, they actually have fruit stands, and they actually sell nutritious snacks in addition to your traditional deep fried fare. Don't get me wrong, I was eating the French fries and the churros, but I thought it was interesting that they provided that option. You don't get that at Universal Studios or Six Flags.
Oh, definitely, and I love theme park food. I love the cheap, crappy fried candy bars and all that kind of stuff. I'm totally into it, but they've really stepped up to a different level at places like this. I mean, I've read so many articles about it. I've looked at so many photos of even just the way they have their kitchen set up at this pizza place. It's ridiculous.
This is a new feature on the show that I guess I'm trying right now as we're talking for the first time. We're going to follow up with guests who have previously been on the show, see what else is happening. And we are about to enter a very exciting time for pizza. October is pizza month. What are your plans?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah, October's been National Pizza Month since 1987 when Pizza Today magazine started publishing in October of that year, and they kind of declared it National Pizza Month. So I'm getting super excited. I'm doing some, I do like standard pizza tours that are walking tours and that are bus tours, but for this October I'm trying something I've been wanting to do for years. And I'm going to do a vegan pizza tour on October 1st. I'm doing a gluten-free pizza tour on October 15th. And of course, sort of as almost as a reverse of the other one, a meat lovers pizza tour on October 29th.
So it all comes out to neutral.
Yeah, pretty much, exactly. But I'm also, I forgot about this. I'm also teaching a history of pizza class. It's a 3-part series at a place in Brooklyn called the Brooklyn Brainery on the middle 3 Wednesdays of October. So it's going to be a really heavy-duty educational month for me.
And if I'm interested in going on these tours, taking these classes, how can I get more information?
You can get all the info from scottpizzatours.com. The Brooklyn Brainery classes, if you just go to brooklynbrainery.com. I don't know if they've officially announced the class yet. I know they're still working out details about it, but I'm trying to get pizzerias to sponsor each day so people who come get free pizza. It's going to be cool because each class talks about a different component of pizza history. To try to pull National Pizza Month sort of into a classroom setting, I think will be really fun.
That's cool. I've heard of at least a few people who heard your interview way back in episode 3, I think it was, of this podcast, and since went on the tour, and they all got in touch with me to tell me how much they loved it. So if you're listening, Scott's Pizza Tour, and if you're in New York, it is a must-do. ScottsPizzaTour.com. Scott, I have a feeling this is not the last follow-up we will do with you about pizza. Thanks so much for joining the show and
My pleasure.
kind of being the guinea pig for this new segment, and also for setting us up with a guest for the main segment.
Hey, my pleasure. I got to tell you, I meet such amazing people on tours, and all the time I meet people who are like, just like when I met Robb. I think I texted you while I was on the tour with him saying, this guy is your brother from another mother. You got to meet him.
You want to stick around while I try to plug my social media shit? You want to do
Oh,
that?
yeah. I
Let's
love
stick
it.
around,
I love your plug.
Because I have to say the same thing every week. Maybe if you're there, we can mix it up a little. So,
Yeah, maybe I can say it. I don't even know. I'm a fan. I listen to the show. I'm into the whole thing. I'm a Jeff Rubin fan. I can say some stuff.
Next week's episode is going to be about comic books, specifically the big DC Comics reboot, where they have DC Comics, as I'm sure you're aware, Scott, have reset all their comics to issue 1. They're starting all the storylines over. We're going to be talking about that in depth with Alex Zalbin, who has written comic books. He wrote Thor and the Warriors 4, which was one of my favorite comic books I read all last year, and it comes out Tuesday. And you can find out when it's out if you follow me on my various, social media outlets. Scott, do you know them? Do you know them by heart? Let's quiz you.
What your social media stuff?
Yeah, like
your Twitter.
Twitter is.
You have Jeff Rubin Show Twitter, right?
Yep, that's right.
You have Jeff Rubin, JeffRubin.com.
That's it.
Right.
Yep.
Am I missing anything? Is your instant messenger name still Wolfman's Got Nards?
Do not have I am anymore. What did we forget? Oh, Facebook. But I always just say.
Well, what's the Facebook page? Is it just your name?
Yeah, you just got to go search for Jeff Rubin. It's like Facebook / 50 characters. There's not an easy URL.
Oh yeah, no, it's just Jeff Rubin. That's all you got to do. RUBIN.
Yeah,
That's
like
the way.
if you're gonna find me on Facebook, like if you are on, it's not that hard. We can just say Facebook fan page.
Sure.
And ScottsPizzaTours.com, ThemeParkReview.com, Gordon Rides. We'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Bye.